What matters more, staying silent to preserve your difference or joining small talk to blend into the crowd? Nietzsche has a surprising answer, and it might change the way you see every ordinary conversation. Have you ever found yourself stuck in a trivial conversation, the kind about the weather, traffic jams, or weekend plans? The person across from you smiles politely, you smile back, but deep down, part of your mind feels like it is slipping into paralysis. We keep nodding, still exchanging a few pleasantries, but the feeling is as if life force is being slowly drained away. This is an experience almost everyone has had. Many intellectuals respond by rejecting small talk, considering it a waste of energy, a social game not worth playing. But if we look through the lens of Nietzsche, a philosopher who always emphasized transforming pain into strength, perhaps we will see this issue differently. Nietzsche did not simply call for the denial of the trivial. He asked, can we turn the trivial into a starting point for transcendence? In Nietzsche's philosophy, life always carries within it a tragic nature. To live is to suffer, and in order to survive, humans must find meaning in that suffering. If we merely stand outside of simple social rituals, such as light conversations, are we not missing an important part of human experience? Nietzsche, with a perspective beyond extremes, never advised us to avoid them. On the contrary, he suggested that instead of dodging, we should learn to dance with them. Imagine an office party. 12 people stand around a table full of wine and pastries. Everyone begins with the familiar questions. What do you do? Where do you live? How do you know the host? It sounds boring, but it is precisely these moments where Nietzsche would want us to experiment with a new approach. Instead of refusing, instead of acting superior, the thoughtful person can join in, but with a different spirit, an awareness that one is wearing a social mask and waiting for the moment to transform social exchange into a leap into depth. Nietzsche once said, "Every noble spirit needs a mask." Small talk, in this sense, is humanity's common mask. It does not reflect our deepest essence, but it allows us to exist within a community context. The issue is not the mask itself, but how we use it. The wise know when to keep it and when to put it down. When Nietzsche spoke of the morality of the herd, he did not criticize it as mere weakness. Instead, he emphasized that it is the foundational structure for human coexistence, a network of rules, behaviors, and customs that keep society functioning. Small talk is precisely the manifestation of that herd. It is safe, predictable, without risk. But if we stop there, the individual dissolves into the crowd. The question is, can we participate while still preserving inner independence? Nietzsche believed we absolutely could. The free spirit is not someone who runs away from society, but one who knows how to move through it, both integrating and preserving their uniqueness. Consider a specific example. When someone asks, "What do you do?" instead of only answering, "I am an engineer," or "I am a teacher," you might add a perspective. "I am an engineer, but what excites me most is how technology is changing the way we perceive time." This answer still meets the requirement of small talk, providing information, but at the same time opens a door for the conversation to go further. This is precisely the alchemy of conversation Nietzsche suggested, turning the ordinary into the seed of a new idea. Nietzsche once wrote in The Gay Science, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Applied to conversation, if we have a reason to participate in small talk, not just to kill time, but to test our capacity for transformation, then even dull pleasantries become opportunities. Opportunities to train the intellect, opportunities to seek resonance, and sometimes opportunities to spark a meaningful relationship. But Nietzsche was not naive. He knew not every conversation needed to be elevated. Sometimes small talk is simply social glue, a kind of background music that helps people feel safe in each other's presence. Wisdom, therefore, lies in the ability to read the situation, knowing when to remain at the level of pleasantries and when to step deeper. Here, Nietzsche's philosophy converges on a beautiful image: conversation as a dance. Not every dance needs to be dramatic. Sometimes it is just a few gentle steps to common music. But at other times, if you feel resonance, that dance can become a spin, a breakthrough, opening new emotions. Nietzsche once said, and those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. In small talk, it is the same. The subtle person hears the music hidden beneath everyday words and knows how to guide it into a melody. If we look at modern society, where social media dominates most conversational space, we will see a paradox. People are speaking more than ever, but also feeling emptier than ever. Greetings, emojis, hurried replies. All resemble small talk on a global scale. But instead of seeing this as a disaster, Nietzsche would probably smile. For here, the opportunity for transformation becomes even clearer. The thoughtful person can turn even seemingly dull online exchanges into occasions to plant an idea, a perspective, a spark that makes someone stop and reflect. Nietzsche called his ideal human the Übermensch, the Superman or Overman. In the conversational context, the Übermensch is not the one who rejects small talk to prove superiority, but the one who knows how to turn small talk into creative material, like an artist who uses ordinary colors to paint an extraordinary picture. In this first part, we can conclude with an image. Small talk is like a bridge. Some stand afar and sneer, "This bridge is ugly, useless." But Nietzsche would remind us, the bridge is not the destination, it is the means. And it is precisely by stepping onto that bridge that we gain the chance to reach farther horizons. If in the previous part we saw small talk as a bridge, both trivial and necessary, then now let us try to view it through another lens, the will to power. This is one of the key concepts in Nietzsche's philosophy, and when applied to the life of conversation, it opens up an unexpected depth. Nietzsche once wrote, "Life itself is essentially appropriation, injury, overpowering of what is alien and weaker, suppression, hardness, imposition of one's own forms, incorporation, and at the very least, putting it mildest, exploitation." At first glance, this sounds brutal, but if we understand it closely, we will see he was not only speaking of war or domination. He wanted to emphasize that every form of life seeks to expand, to express, and to transform. A young plant pushing upward through a crack in stone, an idea bursting forth in our mind, seeking a way to be spoken. Even a smile exchanged on a street corner is the manifestation of energy searching for release. That is the will to power. In small talk, the will to power is often veiled by a safe surface. Questions like, "Where do you live? What do you do? The weather today is strange," seem harmless. But in fact, even those words are small tests of strength. Who will lead? Who will keep the rhythm? Who has the ability to take the conversation further than expected? The Nietzschean spirit does not retreat from this game. They do not see small talk as a trap to avoid, but as a small stage on which to experiment with creativity. Imagine you are at a networking event. Everyone is speaking familiar, somewhat bland lines. But you, instead of responding mechanically, add a twist. When someone says, "Work has been really busy lately," you reply, "Yes, true." But have you ever felt that this busyness is just a way people avoid emptiness? That answer is like throwing a pebble into a still pond. It creates ripples, forcing the other person to consider whether they want to follow into that depth. This is precisely the alchemy of conversation, turning raw material into gold. Nietzsche never advised us to always philosophize in every word. That could become arrogance and alienate others. Instead, he reminded us that every conversation contains potential. The issue is, do we have the courage and subtlety to release that potential? This connects with the concept of the social mask. Nietzsche saw humans as beings who always wear multiple layers of masks. At work, we wear one mask, in the family, another. Before strangers, yet another version. Some see this as deceit, but Nietzsche did not. For him, masks are an inevitable part of existence. A deep spirit needs a mask to protect itself, just as a warrior needs armor to survive on the battlefield. Thus, small talk is the collective mask society agrees to wear. It helps us avoid collisions, keeps the atmosphere safe. The wise do not rip off that mask, but learn to dance with it. Wear it when needed, take it off when possible, and above all, always remember you are not the mask itself. To see this more clearly, remember Socrates. He never jumped straight into lofty philosophy at the start. Instead, he often began with questions that seemed trivial. What is courage? What is justice? At first, the interlocutor thought it was just chatter, but gradually, Socrates led them into the depths of self-examination. This is precisely the model Nietzsche also respected, the art of communication, where the simple becomes the gateway to the great. In the modern world, this image is even more important. In the age of fast media, when everyone hurriedly throws out a few words, the act of turning a small moment into the starting point for reflection is even more precious. Think back to the last time you chatted online. Perhaps someone wrote, "How's the weather where you are?" Instead of answering, "It's raining heavily," you might say, "The rain reminds me that we never truly control the world around us." That reply not only gives information, but also opens a pause for the other to stop, reflect, and perhaps respond on a new level of meaning. Nietzsche called these moments living dangerously, not danger in the sense of blind recklessness, but in accepting to step outside the safety of repetitive scripts. In small talk, to live dangerously is to dare to break the dull rhythm and open a new path. But be careful. There is a fine line between creativity and forcing it. Nietzsche would remind us that not every conversation needs to become philosophy. Sometimes, a simple polite greeting is enough, for it serves its basic function, building trust, establishing presence, affirming that we coexist in the same space. Wisdom, therefore, does not lie in always digging deeper, but in recognizing when the moment is ripe. The conversational artist, like a musician, must know when to keep the background rhythm and when to raise the melody. If forced, music becomes noise. But if patient, when the moment comes, the melody can make the whole room vibrate. Nietzsche once spoke of the concept of eternal recurrence. Imagine that life will repeat endlessly, with every moment, every conversation, exactly the same. Would you accept to relive your everyday dialogues thousands of times, to eternity? This question is not just a mental game, but a test. If the conversation you are in makes you feel empty, how would you endure it, if it were to repeat forever? For Nietzsche, precisely through that perspective, we learn to choose. Engage in conversation in such a way that, if it were to be repeated eternally, you would not regret it. Not every conversation must be a masterpiece, but at the very least, it should carry something memorable, a spark of sincerity, a fleeting moment of true connection, or an unusual idea. And this is where small talk is transformed. It is no longer a meaningless game, but an opportunity to challenge oneself. Each time you take part in a small talk, you might ask, can I plant here a small seed of thought so that if I were to hear this conversation again forever, I would smile instead of complain? In this view, conversation becomes an art of creative value, not simply an exchange of information, but the crafting of a moment, like painting a fleeting picture on the white wall of everyday life. Nietzsche emphasized, "What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal." And perhaps conversation is the same, not an end, but a bridge between two spirits. If we know how to walk on that bridge with freedom and creativity, then even the most trivial talks can open up vast horizons. If in the previous part we viewed small talk as a bridge and a stage for testing the will to power, then now we take it one step further. Conversation is not only a tool of communication, but also an act of value creation. Nietzsche once said, "After the death of God, man must create new values." When every absolute foundation collapses, man can no longer rely only on ready-made truths, but must learn to turn everyday life itself into a place of meaning-making. And conversation, small, seemingly trivial, is one of the ideal spaces for that. Think about a day in your life. You talk with colleagues, with neighbors, with a stranger in a cafe. Most of those exchanges on the surface seem unremarkable, but Nietzsche wants us to ask, can those conversations become moments to create new value? For example, when someone asks, "How's work these days?" The simple answer might be, "Fine." But if you add a little reflection, "Fine. But I'm learning to see work not only as a burden, but as a game I can learn to play," then that reply, small as it is, plants in the conversation a seed of new thought. It allows the other person to pause and wonder, work as a game? This is the alchemy of conversation, turning the old into the new, turning repetition into opening. Nietzsche was not a blind optimist. He did not promise that every conversation would become profound or that everyone would be ready to follow us into deeper waters. But he suggested that the strength of the individual lies in the ability to experiment, to create, and to take responsibility for what one brings into the world. In this art, the mask again becomes important. Small talk is the shared mask of society. But Nietzsche reminds us, every noble spirit needs a mask. The philosophical person does not refuse to wear the mask, but knows how to wear it consciously. When needed, we wear the mask to stay safe, to connect on a basic level. But when the moment is ripe, we can lift it, letting the other glimpse something more real and deeper. This requires subtlety, like a performing artist. If we remove the mask too soon, others may be frightened or unprepared. If we keep it too long, we remain trapped in the trivial. The art of living and the art of conversation is the balance between concealment and revelation, between safety and creativity. Nietzsche once wrote, "What is great in man is that he is a bridge, not a goal." Conversation, seen this way, is never the final destination. It is the bridge between two souls, two perspectives, two worlds. Sometimes that bridge only helps us take a few steps toward acquaintance, but sometimes, if we dare, it can lead us into entirely new ground. One of Nietzsche's most powerful images is the concept of eternal recurrence. He asked, if you had to live this life again, every detail, every moment, endlessly, would you accept it? Applied to conversation, this becomes an intriguing test. If the conversation you are having now were to repeat forever, would you find it worthwhile? If the answer is no, then perhaps we are missing the chance to turn it into something memorable. But if we can say, yes, I would gladly repeat this conversation forever, then it means we have found a way to make small talk a moment of value, not by turning it into academic philosophy, but simply through real presence, subtle creativity, or even just a bit of humor, a touch of sincerity. In modern life, as people grow more isolated within screens and hurried rhythms, the ability to rediscover simplicity itself becomes a philosophical act. To say good morning with real eyes, with real attention to the other, is already a way of affirming life. And for Nietzsche, affirming life is the core of philosophy, saying yes to existence, even when it is full of tragedy and emptiness. Imagine, if every little conversation were an opportunity to say yes to existence, then would not small talk itself become a kind of sacred ritual? Not because of its content, but because of the spirit we bring into it. Nietzsche once advised, "A day without dancing is a day wasted." Perhaps we can also say, a day without turning at least one conversation into a dance is a day not truly lived. Ending here, we can see, Nietzsche never taught us to reject small talk. On the contrary, he taught us how to dance with it, to know when to wear the mask and when to lift it, to know how to keep the safe rhythm, but also how to risk when the chance arises, to know how to turn the ordinary into the seed of creation, and above all, to affirm life even in seemingly meaningless moments. So, next time you find yourself talking about the weather, about traffic, or about the weekend, remember, you are not trapped in triviality. You are standing on a bridge. And how you walk that bridge will decide, is it just a meaningless repetition, or is it a doorway to a richer life? Finally, the question for you is, if today's conversation had to repeat forever, would you be willing to live it again and again? Share your thoughts in the comments, so that we can turn this space into a real dialogue. And if you want to continue accompanying me on such philosophical adventures, don't forget to follow this channel. Who knows, from one small click, you may open a new journey of thought.